Good afternoon. You're watching True Blue on Patriot TV. I'm Steve Friend. This program is about doing the right thing at the right time, in the right way, for the right reasons. It's a Thursday, which means it's a threat assessment Thursday. So my good friend George Hill is going to join us today to talk all things intelligence, all things threats out there from his vast experience from the military and civilian sector, was working military with the United States Marine Corps, United States Navy, and then on the NSA and FBI, brings a wealth of knowledge. And as always, a pleasure to see you, George. Welcome to the program today. And I want to get right into it. Let's waste no time at all. We have a nation in a continent to the south of us, Venezuela, that has all the rage. I don't know, a month or so ago, they had an election and it looked like they had actually done the impossible and voted themselves out of communism. Unfortunately, it hasn't come to pass, and now is a lot of conflict about who is the actually dutifully and rightfully elected leader in Venezuela. Is it Mr. Maduro or the opposition party? What can you tell us that you know and the perceived goings on in Venezuela right now?
Venezuela sits on top of the largest known oil reserves in the world. But because of the sanctions, they have deteriorated their ability to extract and refine. Those resources have deteriorated. We've seen millions of them leave the country to all over the world. Spain, obviously, is where Gonzalez landed. He won supposedly 70% of the vote. They looked at the tapes, the collection data from the polling booths, and he actually did get 70% of the vote. What people are missing is Gonzalez was just a better socialist than Maduro was. He's not exactly, a savior like figure. Furthermore, the U.S. and the U.S. State Department and executive branch leadership fail to recognize the existence of history. There's nothing in history that would indicate that a strongman communist would just, take a knee and say, I lost. It's all yours. Best of luck. Let me help you with a transitionary government. So you got that going on. And then to make matters worse, if they actually can be, is they emptied out the prisons and sent them all to the United States, and we're seeing them take root throughout the country in the form of Tren de Aragua, and it's a pustule that has burst. They're also in league with Cuba and Iran. And if people have missed it, we've been at war with Iran, albeit in a tangential sort of way, for quite some time now, years.
Now, the State Department listed like a $15 million bounty for Nicolas Maduro out in public. So he's persona non grata to them. Now, our current administration has kind of tried to hedge on what the electoral outcome was there. They're stopping short of declaring the opposition being victorious, but they're not actually saying that Maduro is a legitimate leader. And then I recently saw that apparently we're going to deny that a Navy SEAL was arrested in Venezuela, maybe trying to orchestrate something nefarious down there. Like, sounded like a coup from the reporting of it, but I'll defer to the expert.
Two things. Oh goodness, what year was it? When we took down Manuel Noriega in Panama, when he became problematic, we just went in and took him. We lack the moral courage to do that today with Maduro. So in 2020, I think May of 2020, you had 400 individuals that were supposedly under the leadership of a former Green Beret that tried to take out Maduro, which subsequent investigation turned out it was just basically expats who were not happy with the way Maduro was distributing the money that he was harvesting from the citizenry and the oil industry. And now we have this newest one, supposedly Navy SEAL. As much as it pains me to side with the U.S. State Department, I honestly, I don't think the U.S. had anything to do with that. If we truly wanted them out, we would do exactly what we did with Manuel Noriega. We would send in, some airborne troops, some Marines, secure the key transportation hubs, and just be done with them. But we don't have that. We don't have that desire.
Now, you mentioned that Venezuela sits on these enormous oil reserves and see this piece that Reuters reported that their exports of oil are at a 4-year peak, but we're going to be sanctioning Venezuela. What could be the possible ramifications there? I mean, my initial suspicion goes to they're going to open up any prisons that they haven't yet and just send them up to America. But what other ways could they possibly respond?
Sanctions are a joke. There's nothing in history to show where sanctions have worked, um, except maybe Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction program, which we quickly turned around and said, oh my God, he has weapons of mass destruction. So the Chinese are not going to pay attention to any sanctions that we have on Venezuela because they're not paying attention to any of the sanctions we have on Iran. So the only thing that's going to hurt Venezuelan export of crude oil is lacking the engineering capability to bring those production facilities back online. But we see a U.S. company, Chevron, more than willing to step up and help them bring those facilities back up online. And I did a post on Twitter today. I am an unapologetic capitalist, but there are limitations. And when it starts affecting national security, then we need to draw the line. So we're not serious. If we were serious, those executives from Chevron would be at a congressional hearing right now, and they're not, and they're not going to be.
Now, speaking of serious, non-serious, this story that caught my attention, I immediately thought of you because it was two of your fellow Marines who were on shore leave in Turkey and were attacked by this youth group that was very anti-American. There were some videos that came out. We've played it on this program here. I sort of connected it to this broken social compact that we currently have in the country where we're no longer respected abroad. We're in the days of old, another nation would perish at the thought of touching the one hair on the head of an American because otherwise there would be warheads on foreheads there. Uh, you're a Marine. What's your reaction to seeing two of your fellow two fellow Marines there getting attacked and not really having a support other than the United States saying, well, they weren't really seriously hurt?
Oddly enough, I'm proud of those Marines' actions for not going like full on combative, like, hey, I've never tried this move out for real. Because before you get those ports of call, when you're on ship, you get a very detailed briefing that everybody has to go through. And even though obviously I wasn't there, I am certain that they were told that, yeah, because the language is the same. You're an ambassador to this country. Do not embarrass the United States. Do not embarrass the ship. Do not embarrass the Marine Corps. And meaning, you go ashore, you conduct yourself accordingly. And if you get in the jam, we'll come and get you. So hats off to them, as painful as it was for me to watch that. But Turkey is an ascendant nation in the region. We have to remember that was the seat of the Ottoman Empire up until World War One, and they're feeling their oats. Russia is a descending empire in the region, and so we're going to continue to have problems with Turkey. They are a member of NATO, but they did not support our push into Iraq for WAC Iraq 2. They would not allow us to use their landmass for logistical operations. So I would put them in the category of frenemy. They're not a friend. They're not a full blown enemy. And quietly, I wonder even in the 21st century if we really even need them as an ally.
I want to set the stage for a broader conversation. We're not going to have time to finish up before the break, but there are a whole bunch of United States servicemen who have been moved over to the Middle East right now. You brought this to my attention. I'm going to let you take it and run with it. Got a couple of minutes. Let's set this up.
We have no aircraft carriers in the Pacific Theater right now. All of our naval assets that are ready to be deployed are deployed, and they are in the European and the Middle Eastern theaters of operation. The Navy, and we were at 40,000 troops, which is 3 divisions. That's all the entire Marine Corps has is 3 divisions. So there are over 3 divisions of infantry already in the region, and that number is increasing. We are at war with Iran. They told us so when they violated international law and took our embassy in 1979, but we refused to recognize it. The Houthis, with the support of the Iranians, have been sinking merchant shipping and are also attacking U.S. naval vessels. And they're doing it using guided cruise missiles. And that requires targeting and telemetry, and that is being provided to the Houthis by the Iranians. A U.S. attack submarine could put that on the bottom of the ocean within minutes of an executive order from the President of the United States, but we don't do it. So the Navy has failed on its primary mission to keep the sea lines of communication open. They have shut down the Red Sea, the Suez Canal, they meaning the Houthis and the Iranians. We are at war with the Iranians. It would do us good to recognize that and conduct our national security with that in mind.
Now, in the final minute that I have here, if we do recognize that, what would be the signs you would look for to indicate that that message has gotten across the current administration?
Do an easy one. Just go ahead and sink that Iranian ship. Just put a torpedo into it, send it to the bottom of the ocean, and that would be a real easy one. You wouldn't have to attack Iranian infrastructures or their ports or anything of that nature. That would be a very clear, loud message that your savages on the Arabian Peninsula are no longer getting the support of the Iranian regime.
And I think we also need to have a takeaway that the presidential debate that we had recently between Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, when the vice president remarked that there are no current service members deployed into theaters of war right now, might be a little bit inaccurate from your commentary there. But we'll push pause on that for the moment. We're gonna go to a break here. You're watching True Blue on Patriot TV. It is a Threat Assessment Thursday. I'm Steve Friend. I got my friend George Hill here, and we're going to be going into more about current threats in the Middle East as well as perhaps in the Arctic after the break. So stick with us.
The Donor Deck represents a groundbreaking independent crowdfunding initiative driven by patriots like you to bring back our esteemed President Donald J. Trump to office. With unwavering passion, we pledge all profits from the sale to MAGA Inc. and Fight Like a Flynn PAC. The exquisitely detailed challenge coin is a timeless collectible to be passed down to generations. It symbolizes your continuous dedication to assisting President Trump in his quest to rejuvenate America to its former greatness. Get your Donor Deck now. Go to the Patriot.tv store and click on Donor Deck. Enjoy the magnificent artwork and scripture on each playing card, knowing our appreciation for your continuous dedication to assisting President Trump in his quest to rejuvenate America to its former greatness. You'll get this keepsake collectible challenge coin acknowledging your support for Donald Trump's run back to the White House, and the Donor Deck of 52 exquisite playing cards, plus a beautiful display case to show your challenge coin. Go to the Patriot.tv store and get your Donor Deck now.
Looks like you've been sleeping well.
Megan, he's back. The My Pillow guy.
And you're looking good.
Still feeling good.
Well, just when you thought it couldn't get any better, we've got the best pillow ever, My Pillow 2.0. When I invented My Pillow, it had everything you'd ever want in a pillow. Well, now there's new technology that makes it even better. My Pillow 2.0 has my patented fill combined with a cooling fabric with temperature regulating thread. My Pillow 2.0 is truly the next generation of My Pillow.
Now's the time to go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use the promo code to save 50% on your My Pillow 2.0. Not only that, for a limited time, your entire order ships absolutely free.
You're sleeping even better.
And cooler, too.
And you're looking good.
Feeling good.
I knew you would.
mypillow.com.
Listen, if we even think you owe us money, you won't know what hit you. We'll put liens on everything you own. Raid your bank accounts, retirement fund, pension. You'll open up your paycheck and cry because we'll already have the money. We'll haul you into federal court and you might even go to jail. Hey, it's our job.
Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. Our experts will fight for you using IRS guidelines to stop any IRS actions like bank levies or wage garnishments. Plus, eliminate penalties and interest and reduce your past tax bill so you pay the IRS less. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a tax doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
I'd have my mom call the number on the screen. You come see me alone. We'll work it out. Really, we will.
Welcome back. You're watching True Blue on Patriot TV, and I'm Steve Friend. And today is Thursday. It's a threat assessment Thursday. So George Hill is joining us, talking all things intelligence and threats around the globe. Brings a wealth of personal knowledge, and we're grateful to have him here today. And we were talking about how the United States had deployed so many resources to the Middle East. And George was explaining that we're currently involved in a conflict with Iran, as much as the current administration says that, well, no, there's no service members or any sort of active conflict. Now, there was recent news made by some pagers exploding on Hezbollah members. Recently, it was like a plot out of Black Mirror, where effectively the Israelis were able to send messages and then have them explode, and it rendered a few thousand of these guys injured. There's actually some fatalities. What were your reactions to that, and what have you been able to glean that maybe people have missed?
I'm going to try to keep this as brief as possible because there's a lot, and it could be probably made into a docu-series. Number one, those pagers allowed us to track everyone that was carrying them, allowed the Israelis to track everyone that was carrying them for over a year. So we have their movement, we have who they are in proximity with, and we understand, the Israelis understand their command structure. So that was a decapitation strike, which oddly enough, even the Wall Street Journal decried, boo-hoo. But how would they have felt if those people were killed using snipers as opposed to pagers? So it's just an unusual, unconventional way to take those people off of the battlefield. Over 500 have been flown to Iran, blinded, completely blind, for emergency surgery. And this is a decapitation strike. This would be no different, and we'll just put it in FBI terms, of every SAC, special agent in charge of every field office, their number two, so all their assistant special agents in charge, and then their number three, all their supervisory special agents, all losing their ability to work. So it was a brilliant decapitation strike. But let's go even further. The Israelis were managed to compromise the biometric systems that Hezbollah uses to get into their secure locations. So they were able to capture, iris scans, fingerprints, again, putting cell phones and pagers in proximity. So this was, having worked at the National Security Agency, I can say, obviously I would never give anything away, but this is probably the biggest signals intelligence bonanza that I'm aware of in history, as well as a decapitation strike with almost no loss of life. Further, we learned that the Iranian ambassador was also injured during that attack. So any idea that the Iranians are not driving the steering wheel and operating the gas pedal on Hezbollah goes right out the window. So this was a stroke of brilliance. And earlier, Steve, we were talking about our willingness to do something in Venezuela, and I talked about how the U.S. took down the leader of Panama. Who I just said his name, and now I'm blanking on it. This is being bold, and this is I know it's an overused term, but thinking outside the box and focusing on your objective rather than the optics.
Now, where is the balance on this one? You say that these pagers, they were able to develop all of this intelligence patterns of movement and associations that they were having. That there has to be some sort of a compromise between the intel side of the house and the operational side of the house, so when to actually execute this. Well, actually, these executions. What is that line? And do you think that they basically just picked a date on the calendar, or there was a critical mass that they just said, now is our go time? It's very clear.
That's a great question, because having been an intel weenie embedded both in an infantry unit in the Marine Corps and with special operations when I was in the Navy, there's always that argument going back and forth. Like, we want to continue collecting and they want to start killing. So believe it or not, it's actually a discussion that takes place. And at the end of the day, a command decision is made. It's like, okay, your fun time is over. It's time to send the guys in with the guns and make this happen. So we're seeing the answer to your question right now with these massive airstrikes that are taking place in Lebanon by Israel. So They did a decapitation strike. They took out their leadership, which means they took out their ability to respond. And now they're taking out the intermediate missile capability of Hezbollah. So they've taken out their leadership. They're taking out their ability to respond. So all they're left with are ground troops. But with no one to command those ground troops, that's going to be a difficult fight for Hezbollah. I know when I went through the Staff NCO Academy in Quantico, Virginia, that's the one thing we studied, to the point where our eyes bled, was briefing down to the lowest level, the E2, E3 level, so that the mission can continue. That's an anomaly. Only the U.S. and a few other Western countries, Britain comes to mind, actually train their forces that way. Without the leadership for Hezbollah to conduct an effective ground operation, they're toothless.
All right, so hot to cold, we're going to transition geographically to the Arctic. And this is a story that comes from Center for Security Policy, and it was sort of decrying the status of the United States Arctic fleets, their ice breaking technology that we have, and how China's made advances there. Yet another loss, I guess, strategically to the Chinese here. We seem to be in dire straits here. Why do we need icebreakers? And what's behind the holdup here on the United States side?
So anybody who follows me on Twitter knows that I'm not a big fan of climate pagans and this whole narrative behind climate change, because the underpinning of that is that it's human beings are causing it. The simple truth of the matter is we've been coming out of an ice age now for almost 10,000 years, and the Arctic ice is retreating, and those sea lanes are becoming open, which will shorten the routes across the planet. And if the Chinese and Russians are the sole countries capable of keeping those sea lanes open, then we lose both our mercantile capability as well as our military capability. And our shipbuilding capability has been degrading for decades, to the point where South Korea is building a lot of the hulls now for our merchant vessels. So we're in bad shape. I think, quite frankly, barring a complete collapse of Russia and China, we're never going to catch up on that, because it would take a decade or more in a national commitment to build an icebreaker fleet. And the Chinese, now own it. They have that capability now to move goods and material across the globe in a manner that didn't exist just 5-10 years ago.
All right. I wanted to make sure we left a few minutes here to go. This isn't a lighter note, but because it is woke, I would be derelict if I didn't throw this at you, because I think it speaks more of our lethality and capability as a naval fighting force. And we found out that the USS New Jersey is going to be the first co-ed submarine. They've made some augmentations to the sub. They've basically brought down the bulkheads. They've made it easier to turn certain aspects of it. I guess they're basically, the Navy is admitting that women are shorter and weaker than men, which probably doesn't bode well for the overall message you're going for. But I'm concerned about the actual dynamics at play when you put young men and women under the ocean in confined spaces. What could possibly go wrong, George?
Having been a senior enlisted leader for the Navy means, like, I report to the commanding officer. I answer to no one else, both stateside and outside the United States. I've been in leadership positions. My military career started with the Marine Corps in an infantry unit. There are no women, or at least there were when I went in an infantry unit. When we're talking about 18 and 19-year-old men, women are disruptive, not because they're bad people or they're incapable. It's just simple biology. They're disruptive. The submarine community is probably as close to the special operations community that's not special operations as you're going to get in the Navy. There is a high bar to get into that community of psychological screening. And then you get what's called your dolphins, your warfare designator. So I'm expeditionary warfare. In the submarine community, you get your dolphins, your undersea warfare pins. And until you get those, you're referred to as a nub on a submarine, a non-useful body. And you have to go around the entire submarine, regardless of what your job is, your regular job is, blindfolded, and identify by touch and by steps where you are and what you're touching. So if they can adhere to that, then it won't be a total disaster. But having been in a co-ed military and a non-co-ed military, I would not want to be in a leadership position having to deal with the drama that is going to ensue when you're underwater for months, or at the very least weeks at a time or a month at a time, in close proximity with members of the opposite sex. I'm sorry, I can't. We can't change biology as much as we want to have the military, engage in these social experiments. It's an experiment that is going to fail, and unfortunately, we're not going to be able to find out about it until it starts making the newspapers about, pregnancies, rapes, sexual assault, commanding officers. The Navy is notorious for people in command positions getting relieved for taking advantage of young female sailors. So I just hope there's no loss of life, and I mean that sincerely.
You sort of took the word out of my mouth there, at least with the reporting in the newspapers. Degree of confidence that we will hear any reporting of anything that goes wrong on this social experiment.
They'll keep it quiet as best they can for as long as they can until some poor girl's parents go to the media. And then it'll just all blow up. Everything will all come out. And yet they'll still stick with it.
I think we'll probably see more co-ed submarines rather than less, unless there's a major course correction. Only got one last minute here, George. Anything else that you seeing across the ticker, across the radar that we haven't covered on today? That minute is yours as always.
Just real quick. These countries are working in concert against the United States. And when I say these countries, I'm talking about China, Russia, Iran, Venezuela, Brazil, Cuba. They talk to one another. Their goal is to remove the United States from the top of a unipolar dominance and go back to a pre-World War II global construct.
And I think it's incumbent on the American population to sort of know what's going on, which is why we always have you come on to blackpill us. But as I appreciate the transparency, whistling past the graveyard doesn't have a track record of success for most cultures. So, George Hill, retired FBI supervisor intelligence analyst, former NSA intelligence, United States Marine Corps intelligence, United States Navy intelligence, and just overall good guy. Appreciate you coming on again for a Threat Assessment Thursday. And thank you, audience, for joining us today. We'll be back with you tomorrow. This has been True Blue on Patriot TV. I'm Steve Friend, and we'll see you next time.